Alright everybody, and welcome. I am Blazze Valkurm, and today we're going to be taking a look at Project Castaway. Now, this is one I first heard about over on Keymailer. If you're not sure what Keymailer is, it's basically a third-party site that gives content creators an opportunity to get in touch with developers in order to have their video games showcased and reviewed, which is exactly what we're going to be doing here today. Full disclosure, I did receive a free copy of this game for review purposes. A link to Keymailer will be down in the description, as well as the game, if you want to take a look at it afterwards. But with that said, let's go ahead and take a look, shall we? So what is Project Castaway? Well, it's a survival game, like I stated before, that takes place in the middle of the ocean on a cluster of small islands. How the story starts, you're in a plane talking to a recording about needing to find your uncle, as well as, unfortunately, your plane running out of fuel. We find ourselves shipwrecked on our very first island with a giant radio tower on it. You're going to quickly learn that one of your main goals is to repair the tower so you can call for help. And at the base of the tower, you'll even find this lockbox that requires a code in order to get into. Now, there are plenty of little secrets hidden around each map, including mysterious items, old relics, sticky notes from your relatives, and you'll find plenty of little notes in a bottle. But you have to look very carefully, because there's also hidden blueprints that will be stuck in between rocks and under all kinds of debris. But it's not just searching for things and completing puzzles. There are also a number of enemies that you're going to want to look out for, including jaguar, sharks, and even giant Komodo dragons that will all attempt to eat you. And it's not just large creatures either. There's plenty of little insects that will bug you. Once you've taken the opportunity to explore the island, I recommend making sure that one of the first things that you build is going to be your spinning wheel. You're going to need this to make rope, which is in turn going to make all of your tools, and you're going to need a lot of it. So make sure you're always looking around for your yucca fruit and all that fun stuff. And then you're probably ready to head out to a new island. Now, one of the things you're going to need to do, the main thing really, is build a raft, because there are in fact a ton of sharks in the water. You won't make it very far if you don't. So what we're going to do is go ahead and put down a raft base, and then we can fill it with all kinds of goodies. Essentially, you only need a small one to start with. You put a rudder, you put yourself a sail, and you're off to the races. Basically, putting up the sail will allow you to move forward. Sitting back down at the rudder allows you to steer the raft. Now, be mindful that the longer your raft is, the harder it is to steer, the more choppy the water becomes, and the more sails you will need in order to move quickly. Another thing to consider before you move out, maybe make a decent sized raft, because one of the things you can also do is build your wheels and your drop boxes and all kinds of interesting items on your raft, including fires and beds and shelter that basically makes your raft into a mobile base, which is great. Upon landing on a new island, you're going to want to explore heavily. There are going to be hidden notes, and these notes will allow you to get pieces of the code to unlock the chest that's at the bottom of your radio tower, and make sure that you have a hammer with you so that way you can take down any computers that you find and things like that that will allow you to gain resources that are specific to electronics for repairing the tower. Much like on your starting islands, there are of course a ton of blueprints you can find, ones to fix your airplane that you crashed, seemingly even able to craft a whole new one because they give you the opportunity to get a chassis and engine. So we're starting from scratch here. As for the number of islands you'll come across, I believe it's random, but I had maybe 6 or 7 in my playthrough. I had fairly easy time getting to each. You are going to want to make sure that you keep an eye out for poison sources because they will deplete your health very, very quickly. Make sure that you're being very mindful of your surroundings. Even the insects like black widows and things like that will kill you very, very quickly, even though they're tiny. And they move fast, so make sure that you're watching your feet at all times. Finally, I did want to talk about the building system. Now, this building system is pretty nice. You are able to set down little blueprints and then fill them as necessary. The requirements aren't too heavy for building each of your items. Now that you have a basic overview of the game, we are going to be moving into a little bit of a discussion, some pros and cons, and our final review score. So let's first go over the visuals. I've had no issues whatsoever keeping the game over 60%. There were 1 or 2 hitches, but they were so minor and so far and few between that I haven't had any issues. Now, when you cut down a tree, you get your logs, you get a coconut, you get a ton of palm fronds, and you will have an excessive number of palm fronds, like a ridiculous amount, because you need a ton of wood and sticks in order to build up your base. And I ended up with a huge pile of these palm fronds. Now, one of these things, as I started stacking these things up, thinking this is going to crash my game or this is going to cause lag, surprisingly it did none of those things, and the game ran just fine even with all the clutter on the beach. So, you know, huge thumbs up for me as far as the graphics and things go. Next, we'll talk about the sound. So the audio is fine. There is 1 or 2 tracks that just play constantly, and after a while I did have to either turn it down or turn it off for the music, because it was just, you hear it enough times and it's like, okay, move on to the next thing. But there was also the audio for creatures was a little bit off. You can adjust these things, although the sliders seem like they're a little bit touchy. You turn it down by 5% and it basically mutes all the audio. So those could be adjusted a little bit, but that's not a huge deal. At least the audio sliders work, which is more than I can say for a lot of indie games. Next, as this is a survival game, we're going to go over what I thought of the building mechanics. Now, the building mechanics in this game are fairly decent. You have the ability to put down a blueprint, and then you fill those blueprints out with items that you find around the islands, and that's great. I like blueprint systems because it gives you the opportunity to set up your layout and then just go gather the materials and place them down. Now, you can also put these blueprints, like we discussed earlier, on your raft. Now, there's a couple caveats to this. So, on the pro side, you can do it at all. You can put stuff on your raft, you can build it up into a mobile base, that's great. The downside, and one of our first and one of my biggest cons, is the fact that you can put a drop box on this raft. The drop box itself is great. That's awesome. The problem being, whenever you drop items into this box, it occasionally will make the raft sink and then pop back up, and then it flings all the items. There's also an issue where sometimes you put stuff in the drop box, it doesn't glitch out the raft, and you start driving back towards base, you go back to your drop box and there's none of your items in there. And one of the biggest reasons why this is a big gripe for me is because you want to be able to gather resources and bring them back to your main base. There's hidden objects throughout the game that you can get. Like, there's a lyre that you can find, there's shields, there's plates, there's rings, there's bracelets, all kinds of interesting valuables that you can find. And as somebody who likes to go around and collect these type of items and be like, look, I found everything, I put them in my drop box and started driving back to base, came back, and they were gone. No way for me to recover them, which is a little frustrating. I'm hoping that this system will be fixed. It is early access, so we're unfortunately only going to review what we have now and not the hope of future things to come. So unfortunately that is a negative as far as the raft building is concerned. Next we'll talk about the gathering in the game, which in a survival game is pretty important. The game is not too grindy. It does take a number of tools if you're only making the low grade tools to chop down some trees, and your first island will be pretty much barren by the time you're done, which is fine. You have other islands you can go to and build things up. There are other non-drop box storage containers you can make for like sticks and long sticks and logs that you can transport items back and forth if you need to. But essentially, your goal is probably just going to be make sure that your raft is big enough and only go back to your main base whenever you want to repair that tower. Now, it's not very grindy at all. There are a ton of blueprints and stuff you will unlock through gameplay, and so I don't see it being too bad. Now, one of the things I would say as far as gathering is concerned, you can eat like a million coconuts and never have to hunt animals, never have to get meat, never have to get any. It's very lenient on the survival side, which is just a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it definitely has an issue with, we probably don't need those extra items in the game if, you know, just eating one coconut fills up all of your bars. Now, I'm sure there's a harder mode or something that you could do that would make that more difficult. I played on normal. Next, we'll talk about the exploration. So, as stated previously, the raft does have a few bugs. It will occasionally, if it gets too long, it will sink under the map and then pop back up, which is really odd. The water seems to be built on a voxel system, so it will get random sinkholes in the water, which is a problem. If you do get caught on a shark, it tries to tip your raft occasionally, but nothing too major. You are able to travel to these islands fairly quickly. There is a little bit of time that it takes to get to each. But while you're traveling to these islands and you're exploring, the notes that you need in order to progress in the game, to get the tower fixed, to open up the lockbox, are the same color as everything else around them. And except for one or two, there's ones for like your plane that aren't the same color. There's ones for other quests, but the ones specifically for the tower are such a horrible color that they blend into the background, and I didn't even notice them at first. It did take a little bit of looking. I did finally find them and figure out, you know, we got to keep an eye out for these little blocky things. It'd be nice if they would, I don't think they need to highlight or anything, but maybe just make those notes pure white or off gray instead of this tan color. And just make it slightly easier for the eyeballs. But otherwise, the exploration was fine. We managed to get all the way through the game, got about 17 hours in on it. Lastly, let's go ahead and give the game a rating. So I did record a full playthrough that we're going to put up on the channel if you want to go watch that, probably next week. The game runs well, performance wise, but there are a few bugs that aren't technically game breaking. But I had an issue where when trying to learn how to fight the sharks, I was able to kill a number of them, which was fine. but upon reloading, because I had gotten killed, the sharks were now invulnerable. And for the remainder of my playthrough, they remained invulnerable, meaning all of the arrows I put into these sharks, sometimes 10 in a row, wouldn't kill the sharks anymore. So places like sunken ships were impossible to get to because sharks bite you 3 times and you die. So and there's doesn't seem to be any armor that you can put on, meaning you just, if there's anything important and valuable under that water that you need in order to make story progress, I was not able to get to. So that's a pretty big negative. I'm sure, as it is an early access game, these are things that are going to get fixed. I have no doubt that the developers are going to get this fixed, because they seem to have put a lot of work into this game so far, and it seems like they're interested in continuing development. So I'm definitely looking forward to coming back and doing some more playthroughs of this, assuming that I see these things being adjusted for. If you are, however, an indie game player, you know that these games, especially if they come out in early access state, do have these issues. Heck, I definitely want to see further updates, and if they hit a 1.0 state or even a state where the game's a little bit more stable, I'd definitely be coming back. So what would I give the game after knowing all this information? Oh man, probably around a 5 or a 6. I want to say closer to a 6, only because I did have such a good time. I got 17 hours out of it. The game is about $20 on Steam, so not too bad. As if you manage to get about 20 hours out of the game, it's about $1 per hour. That's not bad, considering. That's not bad. So would I recommend the game? Sure. Although use your best judgment. If you're worried about the amount of bugs that I've disclosed here, then maybe hold off or wait for it to be on sale. But otherwise, definitely go and give this one a look. It's got positive reviews of over 300 people, and I will be leaving one as well. Alright everybody, and that is going to do it for this review. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself, and you'll consider hitting those likes and subs before you go. Maybe check out all them media links down in the description. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, stay healthy out there, and I will see you on the next one. Bye everybody.